Well, hey everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to today's show. And joining me today is the Libertarian Party candidate for President of the United States, Dr. Jo Jorgensen. Dr. Jorgensen, welcome to the show, ma'am.
Oh, glad to be here. Thank you.
So I'm very, very happy to have you here today. And I really want a good introduction to my audience about who you are. So can you tell us a little bit about your background and how long have you been with the LP and any other history that's pertinent?
Well, I've been with the Libertarian movement for about 40 years. I grew up north of Chicago. I received a bachelor's degree and then an MBA, worked for IBM, started a couple of small businesses, and later on in life got my PhD, and I now work for Clemson University. I teach there.
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and discuss your general philosophy of the role of government.
I believe that the function of government is to have police, courts, and military, that we do need the government to protect us. However, anything above that, they tend to do a worse job than individuals or private companies can do on their own.
Mm-hmm. So what do you, Jo Jorgensen, bring to the table that Donald Trump and Joe Biden do not? Or what do you not bring to the table? What baggage do you not bring that they bring?
Yeah, well, what I can say is I've never raised taxes. I've never put people under house arrest because we had a virus, and I've never given money to my special interests. And what I do bring to the table is that I would allow people to make their own decisions and spend their money how they want to. That government is too big, too bossy, too intrusive, too nosy. And the worst part is it usually hurts those it intends to help. Yeah.
So a lot of times in campaigns, candidates kind of stick to a few fundamental core issues. Dr. Jorgensen, what are the three biggest, most important issues that you'll be focusing on during this campaign?
Well, number one, we have to focus on healthcare because it is literally a life or death situation. And if there's one message I'd like to get across to every American, it's that we do not have a free market healthcare system. We keep hearing politicians say, well, the free market doesn't work, so we have to go to single payer. The thing is, we have not had a free market system since at least World War II. And when I hear politicians talk about Medicare for all, what I hear is VA hospital for all. And a monopoly doesn't work when it comes to corporations, and it certainly doesn't work when it comes to the federal government.
So let me interrupt you real quick. So what do you propose?
What I propose is more of a free market system, such as is found in Singapore, and also, interestingly enough, the state employees of Indiana. So I'd like to point out that the two most free market healthcare systems out there in specialties in the United States would be cosmetic surgery and LASIK surgery. And the reason that they're the most free market is because people pay for them directly. They don't go through the insurance company. And what we've seen over the last 20 years is prices go down dramatically and quality go up because basically the doctors have to compete for your business. Mm-hmm. Just like when you go to buy a car or a computer, you've got different people who are trying to give you the best price for the best quality, and they're working for your dollars. And we don't have that in healthcare.
What are your thoughts on direct care or concierge care, what it used to be called? Are you familiar with that?
I'm sorry, direct care or what? It kind of cut out.
I think it used to be called concierge care, where you would pay. It's like almost like a Walmart fee for a month of health care with a doctor.
Right. Well, I do like the idea of people being able to choose their own health care. Now, the term concierge makes it sound like it's expensive and that most people can't afford it. And part of the problem with concierge care is that we've got a health care system in which prices are already inflated because of the government. And so there aren't very many people who can afford to pay for the inflated healthcare prices. So in having a free market system where the doctors are competing, now prices go down. So, for instance, in Singapore, well, let me start here in the United States. It costs about $130,000 for heart bypass surgery. In Singapore, it costs $18,000 on average. So what we have is, again, doctors working for the people and not having the insurance companies standing by and inflating the prices year after year.
And what are a couple of the other big important issues that you're going to focus on this campaign?
Well, also bringing the troops home. What I'd like to do is turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. We need to bring the troops home, not only so that they're home with their families and so that we're not wasting taxpayer dollars, but also to make us more safe. As we saw with 9/11, meddling over there just makes us less safe, not more safe. And the irony here is that the role of the military is to protect us, and they're doing the opposite.
Okay, and what would be the third?
The environment. A lot of people are looking around saying that we don't have good policies in place. And I would like to point out that if you look at a globe of the earth, you will see that wherever there's big government, there's big pollution. Wherever there's more freedom, with less government, there's less pollution. So with free markets, we get technology, and again, we get people working for us.
Okay. Well, 2020 has been a pretty wacky year, to say the least. And the big stories, of course, have been the pandemic, racial tensions, police reform, and of course, always the big story is the economy.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jorgensen, can you give me and the audience your thoughts on these issues? You know, how much, if any, federal role is there, and what would a Jorgensen administration do concerning these, if anything?
Concerning what exactly?
The pandemic, racial tensions, police reform, economy. Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, the pandemic. What President Trump should have done is he should have used his Emergency Powers Act to stop the obstacles in the FDA. A lot of people don't realize it, but there were over 60 different companies producing testing kits. And we saw, for instance, around the world and especially in Southeast Asia, we saw people get ahead of the curve because they could test the people and the people who were sick knew to stay home. What people don't realize is that out of the 60 different companies producing testing kits, the FDA only approved 2 of them. So that means that basically the rest of the world got the advantage of our American ingenuity, but we didn't. And also President Trump said, well, if you don't have symptoms, you shouldn't get tested, even though at the time, prevailing wisdom was that the majority of cases did not have symptoms or had very mild symptoms.
Okay, and we have a lot of racial tension issues going on right now in police reform. Rand Paul, I imagine you admire him as much as I do. He's put out quite a few bills concerning police reform. Where do you stand on those type of issues?
Well, if we look at the police clashes, I can take that back to the federal government and say that if the federal government hadn't gotten involved, it probably would not have escalated nearly as fast or nearly as far as it has. Once again, what's happened is the federal government has been giving away free tanks, grenade launchers, and all sorts of other paramilitary equipment to local police departments, along with other money and free training. And if you think about it, crime is actually a local issue. If you get mugged or robbed or assaulted, it's a local issue for the local police. And it should be the police department, the mayor, the city council, voters, taxpayers, and so on, deciding on how to handle that. But we've had the federal government come in, give all of this paramilitary equipment to the police departments, and now they've got more of a soldier, us versus them mentality, as opposed to what we see on the police cars, where it's supposed to be to serve and protect and community and all that.
Right.
So if we had not had that increased, as I said, turning policemen into soldiers, I don't think we would have seen nearly as much as what we've seen. So I don't want to be at war with other countries, and I certainly don't want to be at war with America's own citizens.
Mm-hmm. And now the economy is in pretty dire straits right now. And it's not just because of the pandemic. It's from decades of Federal Reserve and all other kinds of government spending shenanigans. What are your thoughts? What would a Jorgensen administration do to help the economy out?
Well, first of all, I would try to get any bailout money passed because once again, the federal government, the bureaucrats in Washington are giving money to their friends and lobbyists and special interests. We should be able to decide who we want to support when it comes to businesses. I would have never shut the economy down, so we wouldn't have seen tens of millions of jobs lost. But you do make a good point when you talk about the Federal Reserve. What we have is we have a money supply, a monopolistic money supply that is controlled by the federal government, by Congress, by the Treasury Department. And a lot of people don't realize that oftentimes when they mess with the money supply, we get inflation, which is basically just a hidden tax that Congress never voted for, and Americans don't realize has been passed until they see that the money doesn't go as far.
All right. Now, while it's not a federal issue, I looked at your website and looked at your different issues that you put on there. I noticed you didn't discuss your stance on abortion. I'd like to give you that opportunity now.
Okay, the Libertarian Party platform is that government needs to stay out of abortion, and I am following the platform. However, I would like to point out that people like Ron Paul, and you mentioned the Federal Reserve, so I'm sure you've heard of Ron Paul.
Of course.
He was a libertarian who was pro-life, and I would just like to point out that for anybody who's pro-life, we do have a place for you in the Libertarian Party. Many people who do believe in smaller government are pro-life, and I would love to welcome them to our party because basically what we want to do is we want to get the size and scope of government down. But last, I'd like to point out that a libertarian, even a pro-choice libertarian, would never vote to spend taxpayer dollars on an abortion. And one of the stories that broke my heart the most after the passage of Obamacare was those nuns who believed that abortion was murder, and yet they were required, according to Obamacare, to provide abortion services to their healthcare department, or to their healthcare program, rather. And it's just sad to see that, again, the choice has been taken away from individuals. So the nuns should have been able to offer whatever health care that they saw fit without the federal government telling them. So even for those who are pro-life, we would never spend a penny of taxpayers' money for Planned Parenthood or, again, imposing health care standards on companies. However, if you are pro-choice, then again, we're saying keep the government out of it.
Okay, let me go ahead and close with this. Is there a specific person or maybe a book that's influenced your philosophy the most?
Probably Animal Farm. I read that in grade school. And yeah, when I saw that some are more equal than others, I thought that's exactly right. And in fact, something that people often ask me is, well, you're interested in politics. I guess you must have run for what? Student body president, student council. And my answer is always, oh my gosh, no. I always hated the idea that you've got a few elite at the top who get to make rules for everybody else. And so the reason I'm running as a libertarian is to basically allow people to make their own decisions instead of a few elites at the top. And I think Animal Farm describes it perfectly.
Great book. Good choice.
Yep.
All right. I want to thank you, Dr. Joe Jorgensen, for sharing your time and your thoughts, and good luck on the campaign. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. And if you'd like to check out the campaign, we're at joj2020.com. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And I'll link to the website in the show notes when I publish the podcast. Thank you, ma'am.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.